Hello folks, the Y Guy here again, and I do want to welcome you to my home on this beautiful summer day. And before I get started, please consider looking me up on Facebook under the group The Y Guy, and my avatar, my avatar, John Anthony Jones. Also, please on this YouTube, leave a thumbs up, thumbs down. Consider doing that, and explain why one or the other, because we're all here to learn together, and be polite about it, because it's hard to learn when you're not being polite, if that makes sense. Anyway, this video is one of the most important videos I believe I've ever done, and I'd like to explain why. It's called the Y Guy Political Agenda. All right. Now, for years, dozens of videos, I've done dozens of videos referencing the ancient Latin church and the agenda that took place in history. See, I'm kind of a novice history buff. I just love history, and I love language, and I don't know, I just enjoy it. It entertains me. I don't expect it to entertain you, but I've done so many videos explaining some of the history of the ancient Latin church, and I believe there was an agenda going on back then from everything I've read. And you know, when it comes to history, some people would say, well, you know, it all depends on, you know, who wrote it. No, everybody pretty much agrees on what I'm about to cover here. At least the beginning of it. The conclusion you probably won't agree with. But anyway, the question is, what was that agenda? Okay, well, I'm just going to go over a little bit of a summary of dozens of videos I've already done covering the topic, but I do want to add one new perspective that no one ever talks about, and I've never heard talked about. Not on videos or teachings or anything, and I'd like to bring that out and get some of your opinions on it, because it seems to make sense to me, but again, you be the judge, and that's okay. Now, the early Christianity, they did a transition. They transformed from an ecclesia, which simply means a group of people who tried with all their heart to love God with all their heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love their neighbors as themselves. It changed. It changed in history. It historically changed into a politically motivated government at that time. Now, that was the early church, okay, where the Bibles came from. Was the one after it changed into a politically motivated government. That's when the Bibles were published, okay, or the first Bible, called the Latin Vulgate. Now, that is super important. Now, nobody disagrees with the history on that, all right? That's just pretty much common knowledge. If it's not, look it up. You're not going to find people who disagree with that. But now, I want to get to the point and to cover a little bit of how that agenda, how it manipulated people at that time, and how it's still manipulating people today. Here's an example of what you might hear from an evangelist or a preacher somewhere, and he would say something like, "Brother." Okay, or brother. Brother, you need to repent of sin, or in hell. I mean, that's just how I hear it all the time. You're going to be tormented by fire for all eternity. Now, okay, let me read it without being such a smart aleck. Brother, you need to repent of sin, or in hell you're going to be tormented by fire for all eternity. Okay, now that's pretty much what I don't know about you folks. I've heard that in a different format from time to time from hundreds of preachers over the past 40 years. All right? Now, what kind of picture does that give you of God? What I just said. Let me say it again. You need to repent of sin, or in hell you're going to be tormented by fire for all eternity. What kind of picture does that give you of God? What kind of God is that? Well, that's just a just God. Oh, come on. Now, what kind of picture, is that a hopeful picture? Does that happen to put any kind of burden on you whatsoever? Do you feel manipulated, coerced, threatened maybe? Does any of those words come to mind? And all of those words, do they define love? Okay, let's continue. Now, whenever you hear a preacher and evangelist say something like that, without even them knowing it, they're literally looking through the lens of an ancient Latin translator. At that, they believe they're doing right, but they're looking through the lens of an ancient Latin translator, which gets to the agenda issue, okay? Now, there's 6 key words here I want to focus in on. Repent, sin, hell, tormented, fire, and eternity. Those 6 words. Okay? Now, let's look at what those 6 words are in the Greek and the Hebrew. I'm going to kind of combine a little bit here to save on some time, especially in the Greek. The word repent in the Greek simply means to change your mind. No, it doesn't mean to change your mind and turn around and go the other way. That's the doctrines of men. That's just something else just to add another little push, you know. No, it just simply means to change your mind, okay, in the Greek. Let me see. Sin means simply means to missing the mark. There's nothing very dramatic about it. It's not a sin. It means to missing the mark. Okay, missing the bullseye. It's kind of an analogy of pulling back a bow and letting an arrow fly, and you're boom, you hit the bullseye, you hit the mark. Well, if you missed it, that's called sin. All right. Hell simply means in both Hebrew and Greek death or grave. Sometimes it's translated understood as pit. Well, pit is just another word for grave. Okay. Torment means testing in the Greek. That's all it means. Fire is a word for purification. It's used as purification. And eternity simply means coming ages, age to come, a segment of time. In other words, the opposite of eternity. Boy, did the Latins get that one wrong. Well, now I want to say the same evangelistic statement to you, except I want to say it as if I was looking through a Greek or Hebrew lens. All right? Brother, you need to change your mind about missing the mark, or after you die, you're going to go through a testing and a purification process in the age to come. Now, what kind of picture does that give you compared to the first one? Let's read the first one. Brother, you need to repent of sin, or in hell you're going to be tormented by fire for all eternity. Again, brother, you need to change your mind about missing the mark, or after you die, you're going to go through a testing and a purification process in the age to come. Does the lake of fire come to mind here? Well, folks, I want to encourage you, the white guy asks, what is the lake of fire? See that video. It explains it in heavy detail. It's a process, folks. It's not a place. It's not a place. It's just a process, a purification. All right? It's in God's presence. His holy angels are present, and they're singing out. Okay? It's a process. I'm almost concluding here. But why, guy? Haven't you ever read Romans 5, 8 through 9, where it says, but God demonstrates his own love towards us, that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Much more than, having now been justified by his blood, we shall be saved from the wrath of God through him. This is the point of the video. This is what just makes my blood boil. Nothing slanders God worse than this kind of an agenda brought on by a political government. All right? And I'll explain here. There's a huge problem with this verse, folks. Of God, those two little words, of God, doesn't exist in the Greek text. Okay? Someone inserted of God. Someone inserted that in there for a reason. And I know historically it was for a political reason. If you do any research, you'll understand what I'm saying. What is the context? What is the context of this verse? How about while we were yet sinners? There's a huge hint there, folks, okay? The context in this verse should read something more along these lines, all right, if you were to read it properly. We shall be saved from the wrath of sin through him. Not of God, but of sin, because that is the context of it. Because see, sin has its own price. You have to pay a price for missing the mark. Everyone does, all right? However, that price has been paid for on our behalf, for us. Because the verse just says it. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Sin has been defeated. Missing the mark has been defeated. Alrighty? So the price to pay has been paid. That's the whole context of the verse. Has nothing to do with the wrath of God. But somebody put it in there anyway. Alright? Now here's my conclusion to this video. The agenda boils down to this, okay? What better way to subjugate the citizens who can't read or write, There's no way they could prove us wrong. I'm speaking as if I was a government official back then. But they can't prove us wrong, and now let's capitalize on their ignorance. Let's capitalize on their pagan beliefs and let's make ourselves, i.e. the government, let's make ourselves God's mouthpiece. Oh yeah. See, does the word agenda still work in here? All right. Now, then, let's write a book. All right. Let's write a book so that we can unify anybody. And since they can't read or write, we can dictate what it says. Let's write a book from the Greek and the Hebrew manuscripts, and then let's call it holy. Let's do that. And let's dramatically change key words. Okay. From those Greek and Hebrew manuscripts, let's dramatically change some of those words into totally ignoring their original meaning. And let's change them to words that will promote fear. This is how we will remain in power. You don't agree, folks? Prove me wrong on this one. I dare you. Thank you for viewing.